This planet here isn't for the weak. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Zakar, bounty hunter. Out here in the dust and dirt, where the law is as scarce as a rainstorm, a man's gotta make his own way. Some folks find their path in the light, others with dealing with the dark. Bounty hunting ain't for the faint of heart, kid. It's dirty work. It takes two things to make a real bounty man. Whether you're tracking scum in some utopia or scouring the dust of a backwater Rimworld. First, you gotta have the guts. Something deep down inside that makes you do what most folks can't even stomach. Taking a man's life, turning him stone cold. Second, you gotta have the smarts. Being a hero might sound all noble. Well, let me tell you, ain't nobody wants to do this line of work just for the glory. That ain't so smart, is it? I'm no hero. I just want to get paid. A morally questionable warm bed. It's a sight better than a righteous grave, if you ask me. So if you ain't turning the carbs in your head, you'll find yourself in a shallow grave before you can blink. Now, I ain't gonna burden you with the whole saga of my life. Nothing too grand or tragic about it. I didn't come from no fancy upbringing, and I didn't endure some harrowing ordeal that made me who I am today. My mom and pa, they were cattle ranchers on this very rock. It was a decent enough life, one that bred strong boys with calloused hands and a steady aim. Problem was, our ranch sat just a hair too close to antelope territory. And that was right after a bovine plague swept through the Greater Plains. Now, the indigenous folks around these parts ain't usually much of a threat, long as you leave them alone. They'll return the favor. But the antelope, well, they were neo-anarchists, or something like that. And after the plague, they are real desperate. Cattle, cows, they didn't exactly worship those beasts, but the number of heads in their herd was about as good as counting a muscle in their tribe, a display of power and strength to their people. So when the plague hit and their herds got thinned out, our cattle started looking like easy pickings. And we all know what happens when desperate folks start thinking. When I think back on that day, there's 1,000 things I wish I could have done different. Now, don't get me wrong. I told you I didn't have no tragic background, and I stand by that. You reckon what happened was tragic, horrific, something that'd break a man's spirit and leave him to collapse into his own sticky black abyss? Well, then you don't know this planet. And what happened wasn't some great, grand calamity around here. That was just a Wednesday. It just so happened that it was my Wednesday. From that day on, it fell to me to take charge and look after my brothers. Don't forget, we didn't have a single head of cattle left to sell, and our family home was reduced to nothing but ash and cinder. The only things I had of any value were my hands and my rifle. A neighboring family took pity on us, let us stay with them, working for our keep. By then, word had spread about what happened to my kin. So I reckon they figured if more tribe folk came knocking on their door, they'd press a gun into our hands and expect us to repel them. But that keep didn't come cheap or easy. Cattle ranching ain't for the weak of spine. We worked ourselves near to death's door, and the hospitality that was offered to us was wearing mighty thin. It was around the season of warming, maybe just after. Can't say for sure. You'll have to forgive an old man's memory now. But that's when I went out and put to use the other asset my pa left me, his rifle. Now, that's something I recall much clearer. My first job, the first bounty. Pollock Stew, a traveling ranch hand who's getting cheated out of his wages by some big shot rancher. So one day, he got fed up and put the blue art down, square and simple. By the rights of man, he did what he thought was true and just, but the law didn't see it the same way. They slept a bounty on Pollock, 800 pieces of silver, dead or alive. Now, before I go on, I want you to understand something. I agreed with Pollock. I thought what he did was right, fair haven, but I went after him all the same. Didn't make no difference to me. Silver glittered just the same whether it was earned with noble intentions or not. And I have 3 mouths to feed. Word was, Pollock had slivered up into the mountains, back to where his family hailed from. From where I set off, it was a full day's travel on horseback to meet those mountains, 30 or so miles west. With luck and vigor at my side, I'd beat the rest of them. When I finally arrived, it was his best friend who sold him out. I offered him a quarter of the bounty if he pointed out where Pollock's family cabin was holed up. The way I saw it and explained it, Pollock was a dead man. He was a dead man walking. 800 pieces of silver for such an easy mark. Most folks wouldn't pass that up. Never mind bounty men who'd levered themselves. The amount of silver was worth the trouble. Only way he'd get out of this alive was if he hightailed it clear to the other side of Abos. Otherwise, he was as good as a corpse. So with this in mind, and the chance of an easy case, his good buddy spilled his guts mighty quick. And right as rain, I found him up in that cabin. Now what I'm about to tell you, you'll have to forgive. It was the folly of youth, naivety that comes with inexperience. The wisdom I've picked up since, I know now it's a far sweeter gift to sneak up in the dead of night and slit his breather while he's sleeping. But then, I figured I'd give him a chance, offering him his last words, his last stand, man to man. Looking back, deep down, maybe I empathized with him, saw a bit of my own struggle and heartache in this stranger's plight. I reckon so, because I can't find any other reason why I do something so foolish as to face him alone, one-on-one. Standing over Pollock, I could only see the void behind those eyes that were so full of life just moments before. All that worry, anger, and sorrow vanished with a single squeeze of the trigger. I carved a cross into my belt that day, a reminder to never let myself slip into the ease of taking another life. That was 163 crosses ago. 800 pieces of silver. Gave a cut of the 200 to Pollock's so-called friend. With the remainder, I rounded up my kin, used those ill-gotten gains to rent us a shack in the local settlement, Dustspire Gulch. Back then, it was a rugged frontier town perched on the edge of existence, with towering mesas and dusky plains stretching as far as the eye could see. A town for folk with nowhere else to go, where the lost and the desperate found themselves carving out what little they could. The youngest? Oh, no, now about a thing on it. I haven't even told you my kin's names. Timrick the youngest, Dalam the middle child. Timrick, he was always the fastest rider in the family, so I hope he got himself a job at the local messaging post. Spent 10 years delivering news back and forth across the Great Dry until he got drafted into the Beef Baron Wars. Now that's someone else's story to tell. He never came home. The mayor stiff out of him at the tender age of 23, and we never find out how he passed. In my mind, I like to think he died hoping innocent, but the truth is, he probably bled out in some field, alone, for belly full of lead. Dalem stuck by me for a while, helping out with the dirty work, bounty hunting. He earned himself enough silver to buy up an old rancher's land, one who had no bloodland left to pass his herd on to. Got himself a little family, kids and all, called one of them Timrick. I'm getting sidetracked on the gooey stuff. Let me tell you why I call bounty hunting dirty work. It ain't because it's dishonest. Hell, it's as honest as anything out here. But the dirt you pick up doing it is the kind that don't wash off. It starts with, well, with your first mark. You tell yourself, you're doing it for the right reasons. But over time, you'll see the lines blur. See how easy it is to justify doing just about anything when the silver involved. The blood, the guilt, the weight of all those lives. You carry it, and it sticks to your soul like grime you just can't scrub clean. Mina Gruff. That was the largest bounty me and mine ever claimed. The one that set Dalem up for his future, away from all this dirty work. Gruff wasn't some lone outlaw either. He ran with a band of 5, and every one of them was fearsome in their own way. Driscoll Domino, 3,000 silver. He was better at games of chance and murdering the defenseless than picking a fair fight. A slick talker. He'd charm you with a smile and gut you soon as you turned your back. Had a way of making people feel safe right before he slit their choker. Warhorn, 5,000 silver. A tribal from far, far south, deep in the rainforests, where the sun barely shines. He worshipped the mighty Frumbos, those giant beasts of legend. Meanest man I'd ever given a dirt nap to. Thankfully, his appetite for violence clouded his judgment, brought a bow to a gunfight, and paid the price for it. Sierra Fawn, 5,000 silver. An off-worlder, rare for a backwater planet like ours. She crash-landed here for a starship crew, then broke off, figuring that killing, maiming, and stealing would be the quickest way to earn her ticket back to the stars. Cold as space itself, she was, with no regard for life if it stood between her and getting back up into the dock beyond. Yaruk, 8,000 silver. An old man who claimed to be descended from Eltek's warriors from the planet Krisk. Said it gave him clairvoyant powers. That part didn't concern me much. What did worry me was that Uruk was still living and kicking in a trade that kills most men young. It was the experience, the cunning, that made me decide to finish him off first. The man who survives that long now line of work, we don't give him no second chances. And then there was Mina Gruff, 10,000 silver. He was the talker, the leader of the pack. Why such a small band of outlaws hadn't been put down sooner? Simple. Gruff had a silver tongue, could talk his way out of the noose better than most men could fire a gun. He persuaded more folks to part with their goods than he ever did have to end them for it. That earned him a reputation as one of the good ones in some circles. But like any good story, they got too confident, decided to knock over the Tellurary banking establishment's vault, made off with more gold than they could carry. And that's when their luck ran out. It's an old tale. Kick the little man all you want, but the moment you go for the big shots bucks, you're mocked. And that's how Gruff and his crew ended up on my list. It was in the dead of night that we did them over quick. So quick, in fact, that Yaruk didn't even have time to stir before he was put down back to rest. The others followed just as fast. But here's where things took a turn. Whether it was by chance, or Dalan thinking he could shake Gruff like a piggy bank to see what might fall out, Gruff was still alive and kicking after the dust had settled. Dalan, thinking he could strike a deal, told Gruff to reveal the location of the gold and would split it down the middle, 50-50. But temptation's a fickle thing, and I wasn't in the mood for games. I concluded negotiations the only way I knew how. And that's when the dirt comes back. That dirt that comes with the job. This time was Mina Gruff's blood. But what I didn't know was that his baby brother, Kinda Gruff, had been waiting for the right moment to settle the score. Many cycles must have went by as he waited for a chance. Then he came from our kin in the night, burning Dalam out just like our parents had been all those years before. Same death, different reasons. And I was left with a wound that cut deeper than any bullet ever could. When you live by the gun, it's said you will die by it too. I suppose I should have gone out like most of them, in a hail of bullets, or a knife in the back. But instead, I've been left to die, slow, with only ghosts for company. For years, I thought silver was the answer, that it could buy me peace. But the only thing it ever bought was silence. I told myself it wasn't personal, that it was just business. A man's gotta eat, don't he? But in the end, all that blood, for all that silver, it don't amount to much when there's no one left to share it with. I buried my brothers, my friends, in every bit of goodness that might have been in me. Now here I am, sitting on the edge of the world, with nothing left but a past I can't outrun. Every mark on that belt, every life I took, it's all carved into me too now. I thought a man could escape what he's done. Thought maybe I could outrun the ghosts. But the truth is, the only thing waiting at the end is the silence.